Whether you love it or hate it, AI art generation is here and it's getting better at a scarily rapid rate. So while I do mainly think that it's pretty soulless and it's certainly 100% skillless, I do think there's a place for it in some of our workflows. So you may remember I did a video a little while back and that was looking at Midjourney and just covering some of the basic things to create a logo. In that time, there's loads more AI art generators. I'm going to be looking at one today that's 100% free indefinitely, or so it says, and seeing if we can make something using a combination of the AI art generator, some free vectorizing tools, and some free fonts to create quite a nice, unique piece. So I'm going to jump straight into that now.
Okay, so this is the homepage for the new Bing AI image creator. It's just bing.com/create. And all you need is a Microsoft email address or a Hotmail address. So I've already got one of them, so I can log in. And this is the home page. This little area up here is where you're going to put your text prompt. But if we scroll down, you can see some of the examples that have been created using this AI generator and also the FAQs. So things like this are quite handy. So having a look at the sort of prompt suggestions, it's kind of going adjective, noun, verb, style. I mean, you don't have to do this, but it does help. So anyway, let's just jump straight in and give it a go. So before we start, I just want to say this up here, although this is suggestive of your credits, it doesn't actually expire. All this really does is you've got 25 credits that will give you this sort of quick creation of the AI. When you run out of these, it will still do it. It will just take a little bit longer. So yeah, at the moment it's infinitely free, but I'm going to make the most of it now just in case it does become a paid for service. So I'm going to start off thinking of something that I'm into. So most people know that I'm into my horror films and horror books, so I'm going to go for something quite Lovecraftian. Let's go Eldritch Woman of Innsmouth. Innsmouth is a town in one of the Lovecraft books with coastal town behind. So, and then create. And what this is going to do is create me 4 variations. And there they are. And they look really good. I didn't choose a style. You know, you can say things like Renaissance painting, photorealistic, comic art and stuff like this. But it's certainly got that sort of moody vibe to it that I'm looking for. But obviously I want to make this so that it's possible to etch it onto a mirror, and in that way I'm going to need it as a kind of way more separate, you know, not kind of gradient tones and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few more elements and then I'm going to choose a style. But comparing this to my last video, the one thing that is a shame that isn't in here is you can't choose to sort of generate a variation of one of these that you like. So it's basically giving you 4 images and that's your lot. They're about 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, so they're not very big, but you know, we can upscale them anyway. But I still think, you know, these are really cool. Just think that's come from just a text prompt. You know, it's really nice stuff. But anyway, let's change some of the things or add some bits. So we're going to go stormy weather, tentacles, because very Lovecraftian, and then I'm going to go for Sin City comic style. And that's a sort of, you know, really sort of dramatic black and white comic series. So let's see what that comes up with. There, that's, you know, it's definitely getting there. I'm not quite into it. I think maybe me adding the tentacles has added a little bit too much. So let's take those out and try again. That is definitely looking more like it. In fact, that, even though I chose to take the tentacles out, I think that's a really, really cool picture. Yeah, and if you see, you know, that's all solid black and white, albeit there are a couple of gradients, but we can easily take these out, and I'll show you how to do that now. So, what I can do is save the image, just going to call that Innsmouth. Right, so I've got my downloaded image here. It's 1024 by 1024 JPEG file. I'm just going to get this in Photoshop and have a look at it. And it looks awesome. I absolutely love it, but I just want to do a few checks, make sure some of the colours are the same so that I'm not going to have to select a load of random various shades of black, which it looks like I am. So when I'm clicking up here, that's showing, although that's jet black, and this pretty much is, you know, they are very, very slightly different. So all I'm going to do to fix that is just go to the levels, go to the blacks, and then just push them a little bit. And that should level out all the blacks. So if I go back in here now, I'm clicking here and here. Yep, that's exactly what I want. The reason for that is I'm going to show you another bit of online software that's free that's going to vectorize the different colours within this image. I'll say colours, tones. So let's just save that. And then I'm on this page here, which is vectorizer.ai. And all you need to do is drag your image in there, and it will create a vector shape for you around any of the different tonal areas. This is absolutely brilliant for things. If you found a logo you like and it's a you know, quite low res and pixelated, this does a really good job of interpreting corners and curves and stuff like that, and it will give you a really sharp vector logo in most cases. And there, that's vectorized it. And I know that because when I zoom in, you can see all those shapes are really sharp, and obviously this is only a 1000 by 1000 pixel JPEG, so that's not very big at all. So it's done a great job of that. So I'm now just going to download it, and that will give me an SVG file that I can open in Illustrator and then separate out the bits I want from the bits I don't. So, oh, didn't need to do that. Let's just go get this into Illustrator. You don't have to use Illustrator, you can use the Affinity variation. I can't remember, it might be Affinity Designer, or I can't remember what it is, but there's definitely a much cheaper version that does exactly the same thing. So all I'm going to do, select black, go to select, same, fill colour. I selected all my black. Let's just get this off here. Now all of the rest of this I don't care about. So I can just select all of that and delete it. And that is my solid black vectorized Innsmouth cover, which I think is absolutely awesome. You know, for something that is completely free, and let's not forget completely unique as well. If someone else puts the exact same prompts in as me, even at the exact same time, they're not going to get the same result. So, you know, however you feel about it, you know, I know that it's going to be worrying for people in different industries, but, you know, I'm kind of embracing this as something that you've got to move with the times or get left behind. And I think, you know, there's ways we can incorporate this into what we do that will be really nice. So anyway, that's what we've got in terms of a really good vector design. But I want to make this into a sort of comic book looking mirror. So what I'm going to do there is go to the next font, go to the next site of freebies, which is daffon.com. I've mentioned this in a few of my videos, and it's a really, really good place to get free fonts. You don't have to check that they're free for whatever you're going to be using them for, but that will say when you go in each individual one. So I'm going to be looking for some horror fonts and some comic fonts, because I want something that's going to, you know, I mean, it is a bleak horror story, but I want to kind of do my take on it that looks like a sort of, you know, maybe 80s style comic of that story. So let's look in horror, and they're quite stereotypical as you'd expect, like the sort of dripping blood, but I think things like that looks really nice, and it's sort of got the horror crossed with the comic vibe, so I'm going to go with that. So let's just have a look. Free for personal use. If you want to use it for commercial use, contact him. I'm just doing this for personal use, and yeah, that's a really nice font. So just going to download that. And then I think let's go into comic and see what they've got there. I want something maybe not so horror-like, maybe just a bit, yeah, something like that. You know, even though that looks a little bit, DuckTales actually. I'm not sure. Let's see what it looks like. I might change my mind on that one. Right, so vectorized, happy with that. What I'm going to do now is probably a bit unorthodox, and I'm going to do the rest in Photoshop. Now, that's just because I'm not very good on Illustrator. Really, if you are good on Illustrator, that's the way to do this, but I'm going to keep everything as smart objects and vector shapes, so I'm not going to be working in pixels where I don't have to. So I'm just going to copy this, go over to Photoshop where I've set up an 8x10 document, and just paste this in there. It gives me an option of adding it as a smart object, which means it retains its vector qualities. So I'm going to do that, just scale that down, and then bring that down to the bottom. Okay, so let's start with the fonts we just downloaded. I'm going to go shadow over. So I'm going to do a few different fonts. And I think this font was called Shadow, wasn't it? So let's have a look. There we go. That is a cool font. Really, really like that. Certainly got that comic vibe as well. So let's get the other one for Innsmouth. So back to my type tool, which is the T on here, or you can press T on the keyboard. Innsmouth. So it looks like that shadow font has only been created in capitals, but it doesn't. That's fine. So that was called Adventure, the other one, wasn't it? So go Adventure Regular. Scale that up. And it looks like there's some spacing issues with this font initially, but that's all easy to fix. It's the same way in Photoshop as it is in Illustrator, which is your type adjustment tools, like your paragraph adjustment. So if you go to the type tool and click on this, the letter you select is going to be, the space that you create is going to go to the right hand side of it. So let's have a look here. It's default set to -50. Let's see what it's like on +50. That looks about right. So let's just see what the whole thing's like on +50. It might not be quite right, but see, this part of it looks good. I think the MOUF part, actually from the S, could probably do with tightening up a little bit. So let's see what that's like at 10. That looks loads better. So let's just transform this. This is going to sit partially over the image, I think. And I want to do some stuff just to make this sort of stand out a little bit more. So with Innsmouth, let's change the font colour to white. I'm only going to be working in black and white just because I need for this to be solid to make the stencil. Then just going to add a stroke and a drop shadow. So if you double click on the layer, click on stroke, that's got a black stroke around the outside of it. That already looks good. I think maybe dial that in a little bit, something like that. Click on drop shadow. Then what you've got here is the opacity, which is how solid and black this is going to be. The distance and the size. So distance, when I move that, you'll see that how far that's going to come out. You've got your angle, and I think something like that. Size will blur it, so I'm going to leave that because I want this solid. But maybe bring the distance in. I think that looks pretty cool. Might just add a little curve to it or something. Remember, this is still a type layer, so I can sort of edit this how I want. If I wanted to kind of scale any of this up, which I think is going to look a little bit nicer. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of a curve on it as well. So those, when you're in the type tool, you go up to this thing here, and that will give you a load of options. So I'm going to go to arch, and that's a bit too much. I only want it ever so slightly, something like that maybe. And then just going to skew it. So go to transform, hold Control and Shift, and select one of the pivot points that's in the middle, not in the corners. And yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. So that to me is nearly done. Got to just add and then a few little borders, and then maybe a few little comic-y touches. So clicking back onto the smart object, which is the sort of image that we created, I'm just going to get my rulers up, which is Control and R, and then this will snap to the edge of this. That's because I want to create a kind of nice border around this as well. So snap that to the edge. Go to my marquee, which is M, make sure it's the square one. Draw that around it, and I'm going to do it on a separate layer because it won't let me edit this while it's a smart object and it's retaining its kind of vector properties. So got a selection, got a new layer, I'm going to go to stroke. I'm going to go on the inside, something like 30. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, and then it's really, you know, what do you want to do? You know, you could have this background as black. I think I'm going to keep it as white, but now just need to kind of rearrange the sort of text we've just done. So let's just have a few little tweaks. Need to just find a nice kind of font for the or the. So let's just have a look. This is all in capitals, so I'm going to do it and find a nice capitalized font. Yeah, I did it. I went stereotypical with the kind of dripping horror font. Let's have a look at some comic book covers to see what are things which are really common on there. So things like the kind of bits at the top which will say what issue it is, the kind of price, a logo and stuff like that. So I think something like that would probably look pretty cool and make it look authentic. So what we can do is go back into our AI image generator and look for something like that. So let's go back in here. Now I want something that is a logo, very basic, that's going to look nice in that corner with the price mark and the issue number. So let's just go for, just going to go with Cthulhu, which is a very famous Lovecraft character. Cthulhu logo, vector, style, solid black and white. There you go. They're pretty awesome as well. Yeah, I'd take any of them, but I think I'll probably go with this one and remove these sort of little eyes. So let's just save that. And because this is just solid black and white, I can just use a black brush. And I'm going to go with that. I think that's a really cool little logo, especially for something that is unique and you can just generate for free. So let's just bring that on here. Scale that down a bit. And then I think I'm just going to create a little box that was similar to the ones on the actual comics. So that's kind of... So just create a new layer, do what we've done before and stroke that selection. So I'm going to go with 10 this time because I don't need a huge sort of shape like we've got surrounding the image. So now I just want to create some separation. So I'm using my pen tool, go to P, zoom in here a bit. And if I click somewhere near the edge and then just hold shift, that will constrain the angle of my pen tool from like 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 45 degrees. So that's fine. Hold control to sort of finish that path. I'm just going to get the brush tool, and because that's a 10 pixel stroke I did around the shape, I'm going to have my brush set to 10 pixels and then just click stroke while I've got the path selected, and that gives me that nice little separation there. So let's put a little issue number in here. That one's not quite right, that adventure. Let's find something that's a little bit better. So these are quite good. That looks pretty good, I think. Quite comic-y. I'm into it. I think it looks pretty good. So let's just select all of these, bring them down a little bit. A few little tweaks, but this is all going to come down to your personal, choice of how you think it's best laid out. But so there, I'm pretty happy with that, considering everything about that was free and pretty effortless. So only one thing left to do, and that is to add the author's name, because it'd be sacrilege not to. So let's just go H.P. Lovecraft. Choose the right font. And make sure the spacing's right. It's not, for some reason it's defaulting in at -50, and I don't want that. So just pop this down the bottom, and then I'm going to give this a white stroke so that it stands out against all of the kind of waves. So just double click on it, go to stroke, white. So let's just quickly run through a few finishing touches, and then we'll be ready to convert this into a mirror. So I think firstly a little bit more text wouldn't go amiss, so something like a quote from the book. So I found a page, put in the shadow over Innsmouth quotes, and this one's perfect. So it's quite short, should look good going across the top of the page. So I'm just going to put that on there with one of the fonts that I've used on the cover. So probably not that one. Let's have a look what there is. I think maybe the Melted Monster horror font, and that just needs a little bit of spacing to make it fit nicely across the top. So let me get my type tools up again. That looks good, and we can always scale this up as well. So I think it looked nice. So it's coming in line with the kind of edge borders here, and then I think a little separation would be good as well. So firstly, let's just add a little border. So I think it needs a bit of a frame, and I'll try and brush through this because none of the things that I'm doing now are any different to what I've done so far, but I just wanted to kind of make sure that I don't then jump to a finished piece and people say, hang on, that's not the tutorial you've kind of just shown us, it looks different. So just going to quickly run through these, and I'm going to make myself a black border. And the same way as I kind of drew the line across this little box, I'm just going to put a line across the top here. So go back to my pen tool, holding shift so that it holds that straight line. Make that on another layer, go to my brush, it's already set to 10 pixels from before. Where my path's gone, there we go. I'm just going to stroke that path. I think something else like a date, normally they have release dates, but I'm going to go with something that's relevant to the book. So let's go for the book release date. And there you go, November to December 1931. So that's what I'm going to put on here. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So what I just want to see, I'm happy with this as is, and I'd just be ready to make that as a mirror, but I just want to see what this looks like, almost inverted. So I'm going to go with a kind of black background and white text. So let's see, I just think it might look a little bit better. So let's start with the background. See, I already think that looks better. Another thing that's quite handy if you're working on a document with lots of layers is the auto select function. So if you're on your move tool here, check this little box here. That means wherever you click on your document, you see that jumps to the layer. So it's auto selecting the layers, which is a handy little function that just speeds up a workflow. And there, I'm going to call that done. I think that is a decent looking, comic book cover, and I think that's going to make a nice mirror. So let's jump across to the manual stuff.